Well, hello, everybody. This is Roger Derling, Executive Director of the Santa Barbara International Film Festival, and I'm so thrilled to have with us here Navot Papushado, the writer and director of Gunpowder Milkshake, which brings a rip-roaring, female-focused thriller about 3 generations of hit women who join forces to conquer a powerful crime syndicate. But before we start talking with Navot, let's take a quick peek at a scene from Gunpowder Milkshake.
Fine. You get to live. We'll make these disappear and get you into some new, clean books. You'll need a Jane Austen.
A Charlotte Bronte.
And a Virginia Woolf.
Oh, and an Agatha Christie. For reading.
Navot, welcome. So glad you're here.
Thank you, Roger.
Yeah, I love the fact that a great part of the action takes place in the library, and that the librarians are the source of knowledge as well as power in the film. When did this idea of having the librarians be the source of power came about?
I think very early in the writing. We knew we wanted to have this vendor when you can go and replace weapons or get weapons or exchange them. And the idea of librarians just came to life real fast. It's strange how fast it came to life. You would expect something like that. No, immediately it was an instinct. It has to be librarians. It kind of, it ties the whole theme together. The fact that inside books, there are weapons, and, books are knowledge, knowledge is power, power, weapon, the whole metaphor is just there. And it also had to do a little bit with me growing up and spending most of my childhood in libraries. I did not have patience to stay in class. I was given this pass where I can just go into the library wherever I want, and I became real good friends with the librarians. So they were like iconic to me from a very, very early age. So everything kind of felt right, having the librarians, and wouldn't it be interesting to have an alter ego to them, like their Clark Kent to their Superman. Wouldn't it be great if librarians had a second life as assassins?
You have two worlds, 2 syndicates in the film, and one is more family oriented. And it's the female centered world, and then you have this more corporate syndicate of crime, and the movies, the conflict of these 2 worlds. Was that also from the get-go that you wanted this divide come together?
Yes, I mean, even if to take it a step backwards, there's the McAllisters, who also kind of represent family, and we wanted to, the way we dressed them was also in earthy, kind of brown, greenish colors, and the film was more blue and cold, and we wanted to separate, and we almost wanted to present a dilemma that was more common to maybe my mom, where she had to decide between family or career, the firm or the family. So we wanted to show how those 2 forces are there influencing our women, but also kind of like do a little homage or do a little wink to how I grew up with a mom who was trying to jump onto, we have a saying in Hebrew, jump on 2 weddings, like try holding at sticks on both hands, trying to have a career and have a family, and how those things sometimes collides to a point where, at the end of the movie, our heroines are choosing neither. Like, we're not family, we're not going with the crime syndicate. We're not going with the crime family. We are who we are. We are now going on our independent way, and we are no longer bound to these huge forces that defined us. So it's, yeah, I thought, always felt like it works on both levels. You have something more, you know, warm as a family, crime family, and something more cold as a syndicate, but they're the same. They're the same kind of pulling the strings syndicates.
I'm smiling because what I love about your film is that on a surface level, you don't have to think about all of this stuff and all the ideas, but at the same time, while watching it, there are all these thoughts and ideas that you're subliminally or not telling us. I mean, like, I love the fact that there is a three generation of women represented on the screen, and that, you know, you have the past, the present, and the future, with the young girl becoming the future of the evolution of this woman. You know, can you talk about writing the script, having the three generations represented?
It started, first of all, again, thank you for noticing. It started with the mission. It started with Sam. The idea started with Sam going after the money, finding the dad, understanding she stumbled into a kidnap case. It's not just a case of stolen money. And then she's facing a dilemma. If she's taking the money back to her employer, she's pretty much putting the kids in harm's way. So once we realized, all right, this is the emotional core of the movie, we understood it's a female-driven movie. The decision of Sam is a feminine one. And then she becomes a surrogate mother to this kid, and we realized, all right, we need to go backwards. We need to establish her relationship with her mom. And once we have the mom ID and we wrote the backstory, we realized, okay, this is where the Librarians came to play. So it all started with the understanding that this is a very feminine movie. It's about the mother-daughter, you know, a surrogate mom to the kid, but, you know, it all drives from that trauma that her mom gave, you know, the trauma that her mom left her. So it very organically became this three generation that represent the past, the present, and the future. And it's the future that keeps poking our moral integrity, asking us, maybe this is time to change, where maybe in the past it wasn't that obvious that we even have a chance or an option to change.
Navot, the action sequences, which are phenomenal, we see an emotional journey of the characters as the action sequences progress. How, you know, can you tell us about plotting them and tied to their emotional journey as well?
Yeah, absolutely. From the beginning, we knew that we don't want to just have a movie where a guy enters a bar and shoots everyone. Not that there's anything wrong with that. I enjoy those kind of movies, but I knew that I wanted storytelling within the sequences. I knew that I wanted the story to be inside a sequence, and that the sequences will kind of pile up into something bigger. They will connect in a bigger way. So we actually started to mapping out, okay, the first fight is just about showing how dangerous she is, about how badass she is. It's more about her being professional, and that's why the build up to the fight is almost as important as the fight. You see the three of them, she's alone. They're still not very in a hurry to jump at her. It's like they're lingering. It's like she's playing with them, she's toying with them, she's very cocky, and that comes to bite her in the ass. Like that's come to bite her in the ass in the next fight, you know, when all of a sudden she doesn't have the upper hand. And every fight actually influenced the next one, and there's payoffs that's why I really wanted those three goons in the bowling alley to reappear. I don't like when you have disposable thugs in a movie.
Thugs, and they don't come back. Yes.
Yeah. Well, we did have them later on in the movie when when they come by the numbers, like the 30, 40 thugs. Yeah, I'm not going to portray every one of them as interesting characters. But in order to fall in love with Sam characters and understand also her flaws, the fact that she is a bit cocky and a bit overconfident, and to show what it does to her, and she's losing her power only to find them in numbers with her family again. That's the big power. She has to go through this journey, and the journey starts also with her dressed as this assassin, a little bit of Jean-Pierre Melville and a little bit of Umbrellas of Cherbourg and a little bit of Japanese 70s exploitation with the way she's dressed. But the moment she decides to save the kid, she's starting this transformation. And the first time you see this transformation, her taking off the old uniform, which is more blue and film-oriented, and putting something more colorful.
The bowling jacket.
Yes. And from that point on, her becoming a butterfly, her transformation starts, and she needs to go very low before she can rebuild herself. And she can only do that with her family, with her mom, with her aunts, and that led us to all the way to the diner scene, which comes after the big, more Sam Peckinpah, let's go in a blaze of glory library scene with machine guns and hammers, and I knew I didn't want to top that in volume, so I wanted to top that with emotion. So that's why in the diner scene it kind of dials back, the loudness of it all and makes something very quiet and poetic. And for me, that's the emotional arc as well.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I saw it similarly, in which the library sequence, the one you're talking about, the big one, Sam Peckinpah is very just survival, where the last sequence is so emotional, and you see the reckoning. You see through each character how the whole journey has affected them. You tapped into, you talked about Melville, you talked about, there's Michael Mann and others. When did you realize that it was necessary that every action sequence was sort of inspired, or it's paying homage to, like what I'm trying to say is that the bowling sequence is very Sergio Leone. And then when you have the scene in the parking lot with the masks is very Michael Mann. Then the scene of the dentist becomes kind of like a Buster Keaton.
You're nailing all of them. You're nailing all the inspirations.
Yeah, but that is so incredibly delicious to watch. And of course they also help the character development and the story. When did you arrive into that? Was that in the original script, or something that you and your production designers and Michael developed?
A lot of that was in the original script, not necessarily the influences in style, but when you write something like The Bowling Alley with the suitcase, you know that the buildup is going to be a Sergio Leone moment, but when they start fighting, we knew it's kind of a Jackie Chan kind of a moment with the props, the way he fights with props. So once Laurent de Maniouf and Sebastian, our stunt coordinators, came in, they read through it and they were like spot on. So this is more of a Jackie Chan. The next one is more of a Buster Keaton meets Looney Tunes, the clinic fight. We knew we wanted the car chase to have that 70s vibe. That's why we also took out the music at that point, and we just but again, we try, okay, what's the bullet version or the French Connection version that I want to do? But it's still kind of playing homage to those 70s and later on. So it was an ongoing dialogue, first with Michael and David, our production designer, and Michael, our DOP. But once Laurent came, everything clicked, and he kept enriching it with more ideas and more ideas. and was able to punctuate those inspirations. So when we got to, and I think the clinic fight is kind of a great example, he encouraged me to encourage him to encourage me to go even crazier, over the top, because that's what the scene needed. But when it came to the diner sequence, we were all looking for that very subtle, very poetic movement. So it was an ongoing dialogue, but a little bit was on the script, but I was surrounded by this amazing team who kept coming up with more ideas. And I think with Michael, for example, the biggest contribution is from very early on, I told him, wide lenses, mise-en-scene, it's not an editing kind of a movie. It's not based on, handheld short lenses. It's not the editing who's going to create the energy. We're going to go old school on it. And that kind of set in motion all the other decisions, because now there's no way to hide. You can't hide. And
could you elaborate? I mean, to tell our viewers is that, you do use long takes. The first 5 sequence is a very long, long take, and the action plays out in full frame. The diner sequence at the end is also one long tracking shot. Can you tell us the importance of why you wanted those long takes?
First of all, those 2 takes are actually, for me, are kind of echoing each other. That's how we started and that's how we finished. And for me, it was important for a couple of reasons. In the beginning, that's the first time you see Sam fight. And there's a big build-up to it. It's not just the bowling alley build-up. It's from the beginning of the movie. They're talking about her. They're building her to be this, just remember who you're dealing with. Just watch out. So on a storytelling level, it was important to show I'm not helping her with my editing. This is who she is. So they practiced quite a while for that one long take. But it was also important for me because I like to see the geography in action movies. I like to enjoy the choreography and understand where the hits are going in. And I'm a great student of Jackie Chan and Buster Keaton. And with them, it's all wide lenses. You see everything. Again, not to say that the other way of shooting action is wrong. I'm actually a big fan of also the Jason Bourne movies. But something along the way, we got this big wave of movies that doesn't even, almost kind of don't bother, making you feel engaged in the geography. Just punches are going in randomly and the energy is there. And the energy is amazing. But I thought it would be, for me and for the audience experience, it would be more interesting if we go a little bit more old school, with the wide lenses and a very, very carefully lit scenes. And
how taxing was that for your actors to not only learning all the sequence, but to actually have it? I mean, like I watched the diner sequence, the final one, a couple of times. I mean, that tracking shot, everybody had to be in the right place at the right time while they're performing stunts as well.
It was incredible. And I was, again, really lucky to have all these, first of all, amazing talent, but also such experienced actresses. I mean, Karen just came from the set of Guardians and Jumanji, so she already had a certain set of skills. She worked very, very hard, but all of them, from Lena, who did action movies before, of course, Angela and Carla and
Michelle Yeoh,
Michelle, yeah, the queen of action movies.
Exactly.
Actually, it was funny. We practiced that oneer for a long time with stunt first to understand it. And then Michelle, I think we had it for one day because she was on her way to shoot Avatar in New Zealand.
Wow.
So she stopped for one day for wardrobe, and we just wanted to show her around. And we especially wanted to show her that one, the diner shot. She came in, I think it took her 2 minutes. All right, so you want me here? You want me to do that? Fine. And we were looking at each other. I remember we've been practicing this for 2 weeks. Michelle Yao comes in and in 1 minute just show us how elegant. It's perfect. They were amazing. I mean, we kept changing the action to rise to the occasion in a way, like, oh, it's Michelle Yao. I just can't put her with 2 guns. You know, I have expectations. People have expectations. Michelle Yao, so the whole chain was never in the script. Just, you know, the whole jumping with the chain from the balcony, that was not in the script. That was us trying to come up with more creative ideas to suit someone with Michelle Yao's halo. Same goes for Angela. Like, all right, now we have Angela. What else can we do? All right, hammers. Yes, I can see Angela with hammers. That's something so they influenced the script in so many ways, both the characters, the relationship, but also through the action.
One of the things that I love so much was once we get to the big library sequence, that you have 3 plain spaces where one is the shoulder to shoulder daughter and mother fighting, and then you have this sort of ocean setting, which is where and it's Angela, right?
Angela, yeah.
I'm fighting, and then you have the basement where Carla Gugino, and there's such 3 different worlds that tell us so much about not just the character, but also about you know, their emotional world, as we talked about earlier. How crazy was handling those 3 worlds at once?
We actually shot them at great proximity because we had to change the dressing of the locations. So we had to plan everything to the last detail, almost to a point where I knew where I'm going to cut between the sequences. Obviously, things changes in the editing room, but at least we came out with a plan, and the plan started with the colors that they addressed. Because we had to know from the beginning, we want Angela with the blue suit, so it would match the ocean room. It's kind of like a camouflage. We wanted Michelle Yao to be dressed at the green suit because that's the forest. So it was very, very, it required a lot of planning. But once we got there, we allowed ourselves a little bit of flexibility. Because I think, you know, the more you plan, the more flexible you can get. And those ladies were just so terrific that we came up with more things on the spot. So they kept enriching it. And then in the editing room, it's just like, we got so much good stuff. Now starts the real problem. How do you keep the movie at the length that it should be without just wanting to keep all the great choreography and more ideas? And yes, it was, I have to admit, it was so much fun, that sequence. We almost felt bad when we had to destroy the library in those last days of shoot.
You mentioned color. Color is so important in this film. It's almost like another character. It reminds me of you mentioned Jack Demy earlier. It reminds me of Jack Demy movies. When you know, tell us about your decision of using such bright colors.
That was the first conversations I've ever had with Michael. You know, beside of just lenses and the approach and my love of wide lenses and mise-en-scene and very, very particular way of shooting things, which he also loves, so that was great. The first thing I've discussed with David is color. Before we even start talking about locations, we decided to go with a color palette and map it. We said, all right, we know that the McAllisters are going to be warmer or earthier. We know that the film is going to be darker blue. We know that this is the way we see the Librarians. And we actually mapped all the colors that we want to have in the movie, so we have that journey. It's not just a journey, because colors, for me, are emotions. So that's why Karen is changing from blue to orange and stay there until the end. And that's why you also have Paul Giamatti. I mean, it's a tiny little detail, but as the movie progresses, he gets more orange in his clothes. So it's in the beginning there's nothing, and later on there's a little handkerchief, and by the time the movie ends, he's actually wearing a blue robe over orange PJs to just show how complex his character is becoming. He's not completely orange now, he still has parts of the firm, but he's changing as well. And we had these little tropes everywhere. Yellow was the color for death. You have a bag full of weapons, and you have the body bags. So it really started very early on when we were just mapping colors, and we knew we wanted this saturated Art Deco, almost a musical, almost like a Singing in the Rain. We talked a lot about the Technicolor era of Alfred Hitchcock and movies like Vertigo. And when Louise Frogley, our costume designer, came, she was just taking it again to the next level. She's so talented with every little detail she brought in. And even the goons, the thugs, usually you're used to see them looking all slick, like everyone's working out, like all this sucks. No, we said, let's go back to John Huston, Asphalt Jungle, for example. Let's bring the thugs, like the Roger Sterling thugs. Let's the heavies of the good old days, when you can see a mustard stain here, and the suits are a bit oversized, and they're like sloppy, and I don't want them to be fit. No, I want them to be heavies, like the gangster days. So color was there as well, like all these terrible, terrible suits, which are hard to find.
Now, but let's take a look at the first fight sequence that we talked about, which is in the bowling alley.
I really don't have time for this.
Nathan's worried about you. Doesn't want you to do anything stupid. So why don't you hand over the suitcase? Nobody gets hurt.
Counteroffer? Go back to Nathan. Tell him you tried, but I roughed you up.
Ooh. You can beat each other up for added realism.
What's funny?
What? No guns today?
Nathan doesn't want you hurt. Not too badly, anyway.
Oh, that is so sweet. I'll try not to kill you, too.
Which actually, I'm glad that I listened to that because of the soundtrack. Your soundtrack alludes to Ennio Morricone, alludes to Herman, and carries us through all the shifting tones in the film. Can you tell us about working with the soundtrack?
Again, thanks for noticing. I'm proud of Frankie Elfman, who created this very, very entertaining and emotional soundtrack. And I think the soundtrack, in many ways, it's the glue that puts all these different genre blenders and different inspiration, different eras together, because it jumps very casually from Ennio Morricone to Bernard Herrmann to Stilavo Cipriani to all these elements, all the way a little bit to heavy metal. A little bit like there's a little bit Metallica in there at some points, and electronic music. But what I remember calling him and telling him, Frankie, I don't know what it means, but it needs to be a third Ennio Morricone, a third Bernard Herrmann, and a third Stilavo Cipriani. And he goes like, what the hell are you talking about? It's like, I don't know. It's an instinct. See, go figure it out. And he did. He brought all these different influences to make something that sounds very coherent, very wholesome, but speaks so many different languages. The goons are more Western-like, and you have them in the bowling alley, you have them in the clinic, all the way to the mariachi band. The little girl is more emotional, Bernard Herrmann violins. And so I think in many ways the music is the glue that puts the whole movie in the same world.
Mm-hmm. Which leads to my next question, which I love that there were things that are recognized about this world, but then there were things that were not specific about, this world, like which I didn't know which city I was in and what time period I was in. But then there were hints of certain cities, there was hints of certain places, etc. Can you tell us about creating this very unspecific, specific world?
Yeah, we worked very hard to make it an unspecific world. It was,
but at the same time, it's very grounded. At the same time, it was not an easy thing to have done.
I think the characters and the cast helps it to stay grounded because of their relationship and their emotions, and you connect to what they've been through. I mean, who haven't gone through those feelings of being abandoned? Maybe not to that extent, but we all understand what it feels like. And I think the characters, as much as they live in this heightened reality, the way they handle themselves and the way they talk to each other and the way they feel for each other, that's almost what brings us to the ground. Well, everything else, it obviously a place in the US, I guess. I don't want to sell it. But then again, it's obviously not. We shot it in Germany for that specific reason, because I didn't want people to say, oh, I know that. I'm guessing German people would say, I know that, I know the museum where the library shot, but it's this blender of locations that pushes you away from feeling, I know this place. So basically, I'm trying to tell you from the beginning, don't worry about it. I know it's a crazy ride. Just sit back, enjoy. You can enjoy the movie on a very simple level, which is great. Like just a bucket of popcorn, and you can have a silly fun time with it. And I'm okay with it. You want to go a little deeper? All right, we can go a little deeper. I hope there's enough there. But I think having, the movie a bit distant in, out of place and out of time kind of helps you enjoy it also on a different level, because you don't have to commit to reality. Almost like a little fairy tale.
You mentioned that the actors ground the film, and they do. Tell us about putting together the cast. It must have been really difficult to get Chloe Coleman, right? Is this her first film?
No, I think no. She did My Spy, which I haven't.
Oh, that's right. Yes.
I actually haven't seen that prior to casting her. I saw bits and pieces. I don't think it was out yet. But from the first audition, she was incredible. She was such a professional, and she was terrific. It wasn't actually with Chloe. It wasn't really. Not that with the others, it was a hard decision. I mean, I was praying for a cast like this, but usually with kids, it's tougher, but not in the case of Chloe, because she's such a professional that sometimes you forget she's a kid, because she's pranking everyone and she knows everyone's lines and positioning. So she was basically handling, reminding us what we need to do. But first came Karen and Nina. And it was already a perfect cast. I mean, I met them. I was a fan of theirs before I met them, but after I met them, I knew I had to work with them. I was lucky enough that they felt the same. And then it was time to cast the Librarians, and I had my wish list. I ended up having my wish list, but I'm not taking that for granted, because, I told everyone, I want Angela, Michelle, and Carla, and they were like, all right, let's see if we can get them. And again, I was lucky again. I mean, we had lovely conversations to establish this dialogue, and they kept like I've mentioned, kept influencing the film in so many ways. It became their own. They brought so much of their experience, of their wisdom, and they were generous about it. So, and of course, Paul Giamatti. with a cast like this, it's sometimes hard to remember that the guy is just terrific. And again, conversation with him was so much fun to talk about this, because sometimes an actor has different, you read a script and you read it one way, but then you speak to the director and but the minute he heard what I want for him, is like, I'm in, that's it. I just wanted to know that we're on the same page and you don't want me to go over the top or do some, no, I told him, listen, you're a father who's been torn between his loyalty to the firm and loyalty to this girl assassin you've been nurturing, and it was lovely to work with him on this.
And we touched a little bit on the action sequences have an emotional journey. I also was watching that the physical capabilities of the actors, shift the stunts and the action sequences. Was that the case, that each stunt action sequence was tailored to each?
Absolutely. Especially, even if it wasn't that in the beginning, you have to have this dialogue and see, oh, wait a minute, we can do more, we can take it that way. And actually, it only went one way, like, all right, you're all great, we can try some more stuff. So basically, after having the basic, or what we had in mind, we realized there's so much, with the time that we have and how fast everyone is, knowing their routines, we can actually push that even further. Mm-hmm. So it was an idea, all right, let's give Angela the 2 hammers, but she took those 2 hammers and she was swinging them like she was born with those 2 hammers. And like, all right, we can do more. Michelle, obviously, she's a legend. And same go for Carla, Lena, Karen. They were all, might even confuse and think they were born to do this. But I tell you what, I do not want to mess with any one of them, especially not after the training they had.
Yeah, well, they're definitely, they just make it so much fun, and you want to spend more time with them. Now, having said that, is there talks of a sequel, continuing this? You do leave it open-ended.
Well, yes, but for different reasons. I left it open-ended because I really enjoyed the bittersweet kind of feeling that the end has. It's a little bit sad, but maybe there's new kind of winds of change and there's a new tomorrow. So I felt like this is a great tone to end it. I don't want to force a bad or a sad ending on something that is also about triumph and victory and ending the cycle of violence. They're not gonna, I'm not gonna pull the trigger like my mom did. But of course, I love working with this amazing cast and crew, and we had so much fun. The ladies had so much fun. The chemistry between all of them was great, and I think we were all joking like, hey, we can expand on this and we can expand on that. So definitely, I would jump on an opportunity to do more of this world with them.
Excellent. Well, the film is Gunpowder, and I love talking to you, Navot.
Oh no, thank you, Roger. It was a pleasure.
I love, and the title, Gunpowder Milkshake, was that on the first draft you came up with that title?
No, we had terrible titles before. We knew we had terrible titles. It's not like, oh, we have a great title. And no, it was just like, it was called Mother's Day for a second. It had terrible titles, but then one day I just said Gunpowder Milkshake, and like, oh, wait a minute, what was that? Gunpowder Milkshake. All right, yeah, Gunpowder Milkshake. Yes, of course, it has to be Gunpowder Milkshake. It can't be any other title. It just captures the spirit of the movie and everything that I was trying to do, everything that we shot, it just felt like, yes, it's Gunpowder Milkshake.
And it ties nicely with the fact that all the big pivotal moments in her life happen inside that diner. The last time that sees her mother, etc. It's perfect. It's perfect. It's wonderful. Well, Navot, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us. I love Gunpowder Milkshake, and I can't wait to see what happens next with your career or possibly.
Thank you, Roger. It was an absolute pleasure, and I appreciated it.
Okay, talk to you soon. Thank you so much.
Bye bye.